Chapter 18 is the story of the progressive movement in the United States. American progressives believed that through a combination of individuals' efforts and the cooperation of the strength of the federal government, that America could be made a better place for all Americans. And so they set out to change the laws, to change the economy, to change the social structure of the United States, to make America a better place for everyone. Now, as you read through the chapter, 3 points that you need to keep in mind. Number one, the progressive tendency to build coalitions. Rarely was there a person who supported all of the progressive agenda, but most people supported at least part of the progressive agenda. Number two, efforts to make America fair for all Americans. This is at the heart of what the progressives believed. And finally, setting the pattern for future action. Hi folks, I'm on the square at downtown Verdun Central Park. This is the Battle of Verdun Monument. The economic crisis of the 1890s was the worst one that the country had ever experienced, and labor all across the country was suffering from it. Here at Verdun, it was especially felt by the coal miners. The newly developed United Mine Workers Association helped the miners as they were demanding higher wages and better working conditions. As the ownership of the mines tried to lock the miners out and then replace them with scabs, the miners responded with an armed confrontation. The resulting Battle of Verdun saw deaths on both sides. In the end, it forced the mine owners to come to terms with the mine workers, but a very, very heavy price was paid for that. I'm at the Mother Jones Memorial in the Union Miners Cemetery in Mount Olive, Illinois. Mother Jones, born in 1830 in Ireland, was already the age of a grandmother by the time she got active in union politics with the coal miners here in Illinois. She'd been a seamstress in Chicago and had seen the difference between the very wealthy and the very poor, and it bothered her. She started working with the United Mine Workers, a new union that had been set up late in the 19th century. She was also one of the original founders of the International Workers of the World. She was an ardent socialist and a supporter of union rights. Mother Jones' famous rallying cry was, "Pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living." And here in Mount Olive, she asked to be buried next to the victims of the Battle of Verdun, who had died in 1898. If Theodore Roosevelt was the most famous of the progressives, then probably a close second was this man, Salem, Illinois' own William Jennings Bryan. Bryan lived here in Salem for 15 years, from his birth until 1875, when he went off to college in Jacksonville at Illinois College. Bryan was a true progressive. He stood up for the working man in industrial labor. He was an advocate of farmers' rights and was very active in the populist movement. Bryan was also the Democratic nominee for the presidency in 1896, 1900, and 1908, and even served as the Secretary of State for Woodrow Wilson from 1913 to 1915. William Jennings Bryan's most famous speech, and the message inscribed on the plinth here, was his 1896 Cross of Gold speech. Bryan was an advocate of the free silver movement and criticized the hard money policies of the Republican Party. In this speech, he wrote and spoke, "You shall not press down upon the brow of labor the crown of thorns. You shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold." And by all accounts, this was a very moving speech, and Bryan was a very exciting speaker. The work of the progressives not only improved the lives of Americans at the time, but also set the foundation for important social movements like the New Deal, the Great Society, and continuing social welfare programs even today. The progressives, through the work of the government and through individual effort, hope to improve the lives of all Americans. And so, once again, as you read Chapter 18, the 3 points to keep in mind: progressive coalition building, the work to bring in as many people as possible to as many topics as possible. Number two, efforts to make America fair for all Americans. Again, the core of progressive ideology. And finally, setting the pattern for future action. So long from Southern Illinois. I'll see you again for Chapter 19.